You need 35 passports to move across Africa. Aliko Dangote, one of the richest fellows in Africa, is saying this is the most difficult continent even to do business. Comparing the African continent with the France. A French national, diplomat, and investor only needs one passport to move across Europe. But in Africa, the passport is a big thing. And so today, Raila Odinga made his speech about why the Pan-Africanism call is the best thing that can change the continent. I want us to listen to that, but first, this is not a new call. Because Kagame, the Rwandan president, just some 6 years ago, made a bold speech to African leaders talking about the need for integration and the need for the globe to work, for the continent to work together. Without much ado, I want us to take a minute so and listen to Kagame.
When it comes to Africa, I'm sure many people in this audience will have made the same observations. I think we must take responsibility and accept our failures in dealing with these matters. For example, relating to what President Obasanjo has just said, on the case of Boko Haram, or you can use that for many other cases. For me, when I'm watching on television, and I find our leaders who should have been working together all along to address these problems that commonly affect their countries, wait until they are invited to go to Europe to sit there and just, it's like they are made to sit down and address their problems. Why does anybody wait for that? What image does it even give about us, about Africa? In fact, the image it gives is that we are not there to even address these problems. We are there for a photo opportunity. We are happy to sit there in Paris with the President of France and address and just talk about addressing problems. It doesn't make sense that our leaders cannot get themselves together to address problems affecting our people. It doesn't make sense. Of course, I'm saying this painfully. On the other hand, that I look forward for the time when I can be like the two former presidents. I think they are more free to say things than I do. Being where they are and me being where I am. So I tend to remain with some reservations about what I have to say because, but I think there is that serious problem. African leaders, we don't need to be invited anywhere to go and address our problems without first inviting ourselves to come together to tell each other the actual truth that we must tell each other about our serious problems. So, I mean, again, look at the problem of South Sudan, indeed. The first problem was about this country and the people there wanting to be independent. They got independence. Now that turned into a problem. How? So you have one war being fought, waged to be independent, then you have to fight another when you have achieved independence. Just fighting among themselves. Why? So some of these underlying root causes should and could have been addressed by the leaders there. Whatever happened, whoever was wrong, that's not the issue. It is still the responsibility of leaders. If they can't resolve the matters themselves, well, why not? Why not call upon neighbors to say, come and help? We have a problem here. Maybe there is a problem between the president and the vice president. And if they can't resolve it, and each one thinks he's the one who is right and the other is wrong, and they are going to divide the army and government and everybody else to go on either side and start fighting, well, I think in between the time that starts and when it actually happens, something can be done. But it has to be leaders to work towards that and avoid the catastrophe that, like we are seeing.
The London president speaking there is amongst 48 African presidents that flew to South Korea for Korea-Africa summit that even President William Ruto is attending. According to information coming is the Sahel countries of Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, and Guinea are not represented in South Korea, and they're amongst the African countries, the 6 African countries that has kept off the Korea-Africa summit. And so one of the most critical issues currently happening is the election of the new African Union chairperson. And Raila Odinga is representing Kenya in his quest to become the new chairperson. In one of his joint press briefings with the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the country, Musalia Mudavadi, Raila is laying it bare why Africa needs to consider having one passport.
Because many people have been surprised and been wondering how I came to this. Many of my friends from outside Kenya approached me and told me that this position of AU chairmanship is becoming vacant next year. They have looked around the continent and feel that among the people who may offer themselves, you have the best credentials to take this organization forward. After lots of soul searching and consultations among my colleagues and friends, I made the decision to agree to accept the request. As you know that I had been the African Union High Representative on Infrastructure Development for 5 years. That position gave me an inside picture of what is happening in the AU, what the potentialities are in the AU, what are the challenges, and what are the weaknesses that they exist there. I believe that I have sufficient knowledge and experience to be able to move the AU forward. AU is an institution that was founded by the founding fathers of our nation. And their dream was an Africa that was united, an Africa that was cohesive, an Africa that was developed. The development of Africa can only be done by Africans. I am myself a Pan-Africanist and an Afro-optimist. Afro-optimists as opposed to Afro-pessimists. Afro-pessimists are the people who have given hope in Africa, say that Africa is a lost cause, is a condemned continent. Afro-optimists are those who believe in the ability of the African people to develop Africa, that Africa the richest continent on the planet Earth in terms of resources, is also the poorest in terms of development. This is the paradox that we want to solve. We want Africans to be able to take charge of Africa. We want to expand the communication and trade among the African people. I was telling my brother here that when I was a student in Europe in the 60s, it was a nightmare to travel across the continent of Africa, of Europe. In Europe, to move from one country to the other, you needed a visa. And if you did not have a visa to transit to one country, they arrested you at the border and returned you where you come from. Today, you can travel across the whole of Europe, the Schengen visa. You want to enter somewhere and you can go to all parts of Europe. Yet in Africa, you still have a problem. Aliko Dangote, one of the most prominent African businessmen, was saying just the other day that he needs 35 visas to travel across the continent of Africa. His French counterpart, who is his competitor, does not need, using a French passport. With a Nigerian passport, you need 35 visas to travel on the continent of Africa. You ask yourself why? Why can you not have one African visa? It can be done. We can connect the whole of this continent. And that's why I've been talking of the story of African lion. That the African lion must wake up now and claim the 21st century as the African century. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And so I want us to make good use of this. We have been following different deliberations in the globe on what exactly the continent needs. Different leaders have been organizing summits and conferences bringing African leaders, and much of that talking is about the need to maximize the potential of the continent. President William Ruto, in his own confession, is saying that Africa have 60% of its youngest population. Majority of this population are actually flying to Europe to look for opportunities, because back home the governments cannot provide them with jobs. A clear case of brain drain. But if we can create a heaven in the continent, then we will undo that trend of young people leaving this continent to go and look for opportunities abroad. And we have seen recently now being made and labor migration agreements. Every country in Africa is now rushing to sign labor migration agreements with Europe so that they can send their young people there and bring foreign direct investments. So the FDI is what the countries are looking for. But I want to give you a very clear example why it is not the best thing, and Africa needs to find a way of maximizing its own potential. Malawi sent some young people to work in Israeli farms, and they had a squabble just amongst themselves. They were deported, taken back to Malawi, and Israel, the diplomatic team in Israel, did not even give a minute to listen to those Malawi nationals. United Kingdom is also dispatching some immigrants to Rwanda, and Rwanda is readying itself to receive some good pounds from the British powers. Now let's look at it. Raila Odinga is joining the Pan-Africanists in this discussion. And I listened to that speech and I remembered these are some of things that different leaders, including Ibrahim Traore, the Captain Ibrahim Traore from Botswana has been speaking, from Burkina Faso, has been speaking tough about. And has been saying that the country needed to think, the continent needed to think about itself. Just today, Traore, I think this week, Traore received a delegation from Russia. And the Russian diplomat who was in Burkina Faso was faulting the US for dictating who is supposed to be African friend. That US is coming to the continent and is choosing who is supposed to be your friend and who is supposed to be your enemy. And they're imposing their policies in the continent and dictating democratic principles. With Russia saying they're getting their way to Africa, but they're not interested on the democratic principles in the continent. And so this opens a discussion that as Raila gears up to prepare his blueprint for the African continent, there are 4 critical areas that must not be left behind. Raila Odinga must ensure that the continent does not profile the Sahel leaders that have come to power through coup d'etats. Between 2020 and 2023, 7 countries within the Sahel region have toppled their leaders through military coups. And these countries include Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, Chad, Gabon, Guinea, and Sudan. Now, one of the things that have happened in most of this is after the military warriors, captains getting power, France, there have been hostility against the France, and all of them, except Mali, except Niger, had been saying that the France and the Europe team must remove their military bases in their respective countries. The African Union had condemned and even threatened to remove some of these countries, some of these Sahel nations, from the African Union. But in real sense, and that is what some other global analysts have been saying, that move is seen because most of those who have come to power through military coups have removed perennial presidents that really had corrupted their nations. They corrupted their nations and looting billions, hiding or stashing those billions in their Europe nations, buying mansions and estates in posh suburbs of Dubai, UK, and other countries. So when the military coup happens, they come to power in silver fleet without even much of the resources. I may want to show you this car, this military car that is used by Traore. This is and I think if this is Kenya, I don't even think a minister will use this. So it's come out to rescue their countries, and it is the modern day revolution. Even countries that have democratically elected leaders are not doing better. They're not doing well either. So it will be wrong to profile them, and I believe that Raila Odinga team that are working for his blueprint in Africa must ensure that you don't profile the Sahel nations that come out to defend what they call their rights. And let me give you a good example. After the coup d'etat happened, Niger president who kicked out Omar Bongo, Nguema, was summoned, or rather was given a state visit in France. And because he aligned with France, France did not denounce the coup d'etat in Niger, but France profiled the coup leaders in Mali, Burkina Faso, and the other areas. Why? Because it is about their interest. And so even Raila Odinga, as he heads to the AU, he prepares the way to the AU, he must also appreciate the fact that these Western powers, some of them are behind the coup d'etats in Africa. And if it is not about their interests, so long as their interests are covered, they're not going to call it out. Number 2, the decade-long passport dream, one passport dream, must be actualized as a matter of urgency. Even though this comes with a lot of challenges, because for now, even because of the image and illicit transactions from Nigeria has been suffering sanctions, and their passport is amongst the weakest in the continent. Because if they want to move, some of them have to come to Kenya, seek passport from Kenya, then go to the Europe. But this has to be done in the interest of expanding business and ensuring that even tourism can be promoted between the member countries. Africa's best partner should be Africa. There are different resources. Kenya is doing well in coffee, tea, and pyrethrum. There is lithium in Zimbabwe. There is oil in Sudan, Libya. There is gold in DR Congo, Chad, Mali, Burkina Faso. And there are oil in the West Africa, including Nigeria. Why must Kenya get into a G2G agreement to import oil from Dubai and United Arab Emirates if there is just the oil in Africa? And one of these means that the Raila Odinga team must call out and put a clear position on what is the ground of engagement before you actually glorify engagement with the West, because African leaders are struggling to get audience with the Europe. Through that, you get some superiority within the continent. And I remember when Zimbabwean President Mnangagwa, while speaking in Kenya, said that sometimes when you go to Europe and you're able to speak good English, which is their language, then you are really touted as the best man. But in real sense, Africa can speak Swahili. East Africa can speak Swahili, which is their language. And that is something that even Nani said here. Even Museveni said that they don't even have a language. They speak one language and, you know, they speak different languages. But Africa has a privilege of having one language. So before you seek the West, and that is why my conscience is very clear. The balance must be struck. It is not about it, because you will realize that glorifying of the West make them even to erode the democratic principles in the countries. And lastly, inter-Africa trade will help in utilizing resources being smuggled out. The oil in the West Africa is being mined by multinationals. The gold in West Africa is being mined by France. Sudan, the oil in Sudan is being mined and heading to United Arab Emirates. The same to oil in Libya. It is being smuggled out. Lithium from Zimbabwe is being smuggled out to make batteries, which are then sold to Africa. Very expensive. But there are very big investors in the continent, like Aliko Dangote and others, that can also put up the infrastructure for it. If the complaint has been about the resources, then Africa can create and bring its own resources and shed off the IMF and the World Bank that come looking and packaged as saviors, but in real sense are just erecting death traps for the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my take. Thank you.